ちゃん、ダブルピースでじっとしてて。ありゃりゃ。
Oh no. Yeah, you see that look on the face? Ah. Oh, that's a great shot. It's gonna come out the other side. Reactions though. Oh, look at this shot. Fantastic. All those thoughts. Kobenin. Oh.
親が優秀な兄だけは大学に行かせたいからって私に働かせたんです。風俗かデビルハンターしか選択肢なかったんです。
Why was it those two?
私も大学に行きたかったんです。コベニちゃん、悪魔は恐怖が大好物だからね。
コベニ。
怖がってたら相手の思うツボだよ。
部屋の時計、さっきから8時18分です。どの部屋の時計も8時18分で止まっていました。
Wow. Oh.
この8回だけ悪魔の力で時間が止まっている可能性があります。その場合、助けは来ないかもしれません。
じゃあ寝放題じゃねえか。
You'll starve, my guy.
バカか貴様は。
こんないいベッドがあんだ。寝なきゃいいんだよ。
Yeah.
俺は悪魔に感謝して眠るぜ。
食べ物は宿泊客が逃げるとき置いていった荷物に少しだけ。
Okay, that's
正直さ、みんな参ってきてるんだよ。アキ君は
Great
ずっと後を探
shots.
してる。今は状況に怖がって部屋に閉じこもってる。
Can't blame him. Can't blame
小
him.
紅ちゃんはおかしくなってトイレの水を飲もうとしたから気づいた。
Yeah, sleep's gonna do her some good.
わしは暇だからノーベル賞を考えておった。ノーベル賞を発明すれば人間はわしにひれ伏すじゃろうて。わしは総理大臣になる。人間が苦しんでる姿が見たいからの。うぬは落ち着いてつまらんの。今アキ君が頑張ってるから私はゆっくり休んでていいの。
They've nailed a really specific look here. I'll talk about it later.
依存できるもんがあるといいよね。何かに寄りかかっていきたい人生ですよ。
それあいつと同じタバコじゃん。
Is it now?
そりゃあきくんにタバコの味を知ったのは
Yeah, they've been partners, right?
私だもん。
Here we go.
あ
Bit
き
of a
くんは吸わ
flashback.
ないの？
骨が腐るから吸わない。
付き合いがあるから吸えた方がいいよ。
There's coffee for
や
that.
る気はない。
なんで公安来たのか当ててあげる。10の悪魔を殺すためでしょ。
Oh,
公安に来
yes.
る暗めの人は全員そうだから。デビルハンターなんて短命なんだから吸っちゃえばいいのに。
俺は簡単には死なない。
そうしてね。バディが死ぬのは面倒だからさ。
But he does start smoking though. Oh, great transition. Oh. Is that her mom?
なんだ今の。
He does start smoking.
前のバディの彼女さ。
Oh.
死んだバディの遺族とかとトラブルになるのはよくあること。悪魔に仕返しできる力がないから。
殴ったやつの服にこっそりガムつけ
Yeah.
やられたらやり返すべきだ。あんたの問題じゃない。あいつは服についてるガムに気づかず生きていくんだ。
Wow.
頭のネジがぶっ飛んでるやつだって。だからアキくんは長生きできそう。一本あげる。
Wow.
腐るから吸わない。
It's bad for your bones.
長い付き合いになりそうだから吸ってほしいな。
一本だけ吸ってやる。一生で吸うタバコはこの一本だけだ。
Oh, wow, yes.
姫野先輩、タバコ残ってます。
Himeno.
しょうがないな。
キスだずるい関節キスだ
黙れ俺たちが殺した悪魔がいだろう。
わしが殺したやつじゃな。
そいつがどんどん大きくなってる。
A lot bigger.
わしが殺したはずじゃ。
So it kind of multiplies,
見
or
られない。見たこともない形状。
she's about to entice them, or he's about to entice her. It. Oh no, the other two might take that offer. Oh my god. Fear, man, fear.
デンジ食わせろ。
Oh god.
狐で飲み込めば終わるんじゃない？
コン
Oh,
やっぱ
not
り
in
狐は
here.
来ませんね。ここは外と断絶されてる。
Ah.
狐の体は京都にあるからね。
Ah.
私のゴーストでやるか。
このままじゃみんなホテルで餓死ですよ。
No, come
デ
on.
ビルハンターが悪魔と契約することは法律でも認められている。
It's also kind of understandable.
その悪魔の契約を受けるべきです。悪魔はデンジを殺したがっている。デンジの死が悪魔側の利益になるんだろう。だから契約は受けない。
じゃあ私も。
とにかくデンジは殺さない。俺たちはデビルハンター。殺すのは悪魔だけだ。
That's cute.
悪魔の言葉を信じるなら奴を殺すことはできない。でもデンジも殺すつもりはない。どうしようもなくなったら刀を使います。
それはダメ。
刀使えば解決できんならよ
Do tell,
使
do
えばいい
tell.
じゃん
There's got to be some kind
どう
of.
しようもなくなっても刀は使わない。
Okay.
マジをかばうの。私たちで
Wow.
荒井君は悪魔の仲間なんだ。スパイだったんだ。
Jeez.
酸っぱいじゃ。
俺は悪魔の仲間なんかじゃ。
絶対スパイだ。
Ah, yeah, it's gone.
姫
Fear. His heart. Pochta. Oh. Look at that. It's almost as if. Of course, the infinity symbol. It's almost as if there's a hit out on the Chainsaw Man. On the devil's side. What? Wow.
刀を使う。いいですよね、姫野先輩。姫野先輩。
No.
おいあんた何してんだ
It's clearly at a great cost.
使うと契約でアキ君の寿命がかなり減るの。アキ君はまだやらなきゃいけないことがたくさんあるんだ。
Hey, stop it, stop it. Oh. Whoa, look at that. Wow. Oh.
確かにそいつは刺されても仕方のない胸くその悪い野郎だが、
The
10の
katana.
悪魔を殺そうとしている。俺一人じゃ10の悪魔を殺せないんだ。
But beyond that,
殺すには立ち向かう気概のあるデビルハンターが天地は殺させない。
but I think there's more to it.
パワー
It's a dysfunctional family of sorts now.
こいつの血止められるか
他人の血は難儀じゃが。
Give it a shot. Give it a shot. There you go.
ちょんまげが死んだら飯を作る人間が
Ah,
いなくなる
yeah.
も
It is a family.
う仕方なくやってやるわ。
She's seeing it right in front of her eyes. Whoa.
アキ君どうしよう。私のせいじゃない。
あの悪魔なんだか知らねえが俺のチェーンソーにビビってやがる。それにあの悪魔攻撃を受けた時に痛いって言ってやがった。
Go Denji.
だったらよあいつが死にたくなるまで痛めつけて自殺させりゃいい。
悪魔みたいな発想じゃない。
俺をかばいやがって
Yeah, now he
余
feels
計なことすんじゃねえよクソが。俺は誰かに借りつくんのもううんざりなんだよ。
Okay, episode 6 of Chainsaw Man, the midpoint of the season, and I've got to say, that is perhaps the best episode yet. At least in my opinion, that's got to be top 3, top 2 best episode. I just loved everything about that, and I knew I had something exciting on my hands in the conclusion of the last episode. The setup for this. And I love how it wasn't just like a one and done, right? It's going to continue, and it promises to be batshit crazy, right? Much like Denji's plan, batshit crazy, but it appears it is going to require something of that sort, a plan of that sort to potentially make it out of here, without having to, give up Denji and having to use the sword, the katana, right? Now it appears that is yet another contract that Aki has made. I mean, it's becoming clear at this point that he spent a lot of these years equipping himself as best as he can, right? For this potential, this possible, this faithful encounter with the Gun Devil, right? I mean, it really feels like it is going to go down at some point. You see that he's made deals with things like the Fox Devil. Though, of course, the Fox Devil could not show up to assist in this situation because it is quite the fascinating and interesting one. They're frozen in time and essentially not even in the same space, right? It's kind of removed from all of that. So, of course, the Fox Devil could not come and assist. And yes, there's confirmation that indeed they are holding the body at a different location. So I believe I brought that possibility up. So, yeah, that was good to get a confirmation on that. Kyoto, I believe. And then there's a big revelation that indeed he has yet another contract, right? And this one is a lot more taxing than the deal with the Fox Devil. This is something that takes off years or slices off years off of his life, right? Not just years. It appears that it's like a solid chunk of his life, a solid chunk of his remaining life. It's starting to remind me of the Death Note and Shinigami Eyes deal. So yeah, that deal. But before I go any further, so is that I get okay? So I guess you have to kind of think of the type of devil this might be through, right? A sword, a katana. So the fear of swords, perhaps. After this episode, you can kind of imagine any type of fear. The fear of swords is really quite an understandable one. So, a potential sword devil, a katana devil, and he was actually down to use it. He was down to use it for Denji, to make sure that Denji doesn't die. And you see that it scares the shit out of Himeno, the possibility of this. I mean, to her, it's like this untouchable, unthinkable approach to anything that you simply cannot even take this approach as a last resort. So yeah, this is quite the deal he's made. But, like I said, he's equipping himself. And that includes someone like Denji, right? You see, he's realized, you can start applying some of the flashbacks to his line of thinking here. You see his reaction to a laissez-faire, a nonchalant Denji who's able to kind of be at peace, be calm about the situation. Like, his mind is completely at rest at that moment. There's no fear, there's no being on edge. There's no thinking of how he's going to get out of there. He's able to kind of just enjoy the moment, be in the moment, right? And you see Aki's reaction to that. It's really quite a definitive reaction, right? It kind of takes you back to that moment in the flashback. Himeno telling Aki about her master, or one of her masters, that the devils are afraid of, the ones that have a screw loose, the crazy ones, right? Those are the ones that the devils are really afraid of. Now, beyond that aspect of it, yes, of course, Aki is not an idiot. He knows that's an asset. He can use Denji. And, I mentioned this last episode, didn't The possibility of now having Denji be on the same side in the sense that he has the same goal, right? It doesn't matter how he got to that goal, right? Of course, it's a different path towards that goal, but it's the same goal nonetheless. And then, like I mentioned, through that possibility, you have the potential of Aki kind of becoming even more close to Denji, or much more than before. I see great signs here that Aki actually does care about Denji. I mean, throughout this episode, on multiple occasions, Aki defends Denji, right? There's a really poignant moment earlier on, right? The line of dialogue, something along the lines of, listen, we're not going to kill Denji. We're devil hunters, that we kill devils. So I felt that was actually quite a telling moment. I felt like that was quite a major moment, an important moment in terms of the perception Aki has of Denji. Even Power, perhaps, but in this specific case, Denji, right? Power is a bit of a unique case, You see that she actually, she's enjoying, she finds it quite amusing, a lot of this, and it can't be forgotten that she is a devil. After all, at the end of the day, she is a devil, so, and again, it's perfectly in line with that character. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, she's not displaying any empathy, right? She's a terrible person. No, you can't even begin to take that approach. That is Power. That is the person she is, right? She can't even control that aspect of it. And, even though it's a bit of a sad moment, it's a bit of a jarring moment, her laughing in Kobine's face as she's kind of trauma dumping, right? And it is a sad backstory, right? But, I've got to say the voice acting for Power continues to be some of the standout, right? I can't even begin to think about the potential dub for that. I mean, no, I'm sorry, but no, that is Power, right? The laugh, oh my goodness, the laughing, it feels so authentic, because a lot of times laughing or laughs in anime, or, anything that really requires voiceover, it can feel a bit inauthentic, right? Almost performative. But here, through Power, you see it feels so real, doesn't it? And now I'm kind of thinking of Luffy and that laugh. It's quite a specific laugh. It really always felt authentic, right? And then you have Zoro. Every now and then, Zoro kind of breaks and he'll laugh. Luffy and Zoro have a lot of really, bro moments. They'll both kind of share a joke and they'll laugh. There's a great moment as they're both kind of on the run, and Zoro kind of breaks and he laughs, and you see the big smile on Luffy's face. I mean, his face was just lit up to see his friend, his brother, kind of having that moment, right? He was so happy just to see Zoro happy and laughing, right? It's just a fantastic moment. But I digress. Let me get back on track to Chainsaw Man. But yeah, Kobine's backstory, that is just tragic. That is heartbreaking, Now, I suppose those are the only two options, because I guess her parents kind of looked at the situation and, kind of go through different professions and realized these two are the ones that are almost kind of airtight or guaranteed to start kind of, bringing in that cash flow. So she was forced into this profession by her parents because they wanted the son, who's the more gifted of the two, to go to college, right? And yeah, it's heartbreaking because that kind of thing happens. Surely that kind of thing happens, And she does have her own dreams, right? She wants to go to college, and the thought of being stuck in here forever and not being able to kind of pursue those dreams, that's a tough one for her to swallow, for her specifically, right? I mean, of course, she kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in this one. She feels like she is so out of place, that she is simply not cut out for this. And that kind of makes you think, how exactly was she even hired? But then, of course, you kind of have to go back to the last episode, Himeno mentioning that she does have a skill set, that she is quite impressive, or she can be quite impressive. So there is something there, right? But for the most part, she has a crippling fear of essentially anything in this field, in this line of work. And yeah, it's realistic. It is realistic. I think her and Arai's reactions in these are really quite understandable. And, to me, the moment the Eternity Devil put out that contract, that offer, I knew, it was clear that both of them are going to implore the others to take this chance, right? Of course, Arai's approach is a little bit different, though, of course, he also starts breaking down. He has a panic attack. I feel like his reaction is perhaps the most realistic, the most human, right? In comparison to us, actual people in that situation. You know, at first he does have a bit of a level head, but as time progresses, right, it's not really even a concept in there. But, you know, as that kind of plays out, he starts breaking down, right? He starts thinking. And that's the reason I really loved this setting, right? This liminal space, you know, eternity on the 8th floor, right? Of course, you turn the whole building to its side, and you're turning the 8 to its side as well, right? The eternity symbol. So, you know, in that sense, a bit of a reference to Inception as well, you know, especially given the suits, right? So, yeah, you know, it's great. It's great to see these references pop up. I mean, you know, beyond a potential reference to Inception there, of course, you know, clearly it's referencing The Shining. So it really leans into that one, doesn't it? So it was great to see, right? The Easter eggs and, you know, the shot references. I mean, yes, you know, I feel protective of Denji. And in that sense, Aki is kind of being the audience surrogate, right? Or kind of playing the part of audience surrogate because he is the one standing up for Denji throughout the episode. So Arai and Kobane's approach to this is really quite understandable. It really is. It's realistic. At no point did I feel any sort of animosity towards either one of them, right? It's really easy to put yourselves in their shoes in that situation. It really is. In that sense, you know, it gets you thinking, how would you possibly approach this type of situation? I mean, listen, call me a little bit crazy, but as the episode's playing out, I was thinking, you know, this is the type of thing I could really use. I mean, you know, there's just never enough time, right? So much to do, but there's just never enough time. And, you know, I think time is quite precious as well. So, you know, there's a fine balance there in terms of how you use that time, that limited time you have, because, you know, life is short. It just kind of flies by. It really does. So, you know, hypothetically, getting to enter this type of space, right? Kind of like the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z as well. You know, I see a lot of benefits, but, you know, it's not as easy as that though, is it, right? Because here, it's not as simple as picking and choosing, right? They're stuck here, and they're not just stuck here. There is this dread, you know, that's looming above them. And the really big threat here is actually their own thoughts and fears, right? That's the downside. That's the other end of the scale, right? You know, Denji and Power, you know, yes, perfectly in line with their characters. They start using that time for something completely different. You know, Denji thinks it's a good chance to catch up on some sleep. And yeah, you know, he puts that into motion. And Power, she has a lot of time to think about, you know, her next move, if they are to make it out of here, right? And it's a fun moment, isn't it? It's a fun segment. But then, of course, you know, a bit more realistically, because, of course, Power and Denji are not normal in that sense, but Arai and Kobene are. You know, those are the most human characters in this ensemble so far, you know, in this experimental group of theirs. You know, they are left to their thoughts, and those thoughts linger. You know, fear starts to set in, and of course, Kobene is playing a big part in assisting the Eternity Devil's growth in that sense, because of that constant fear, that crippling fear. And, you know, that's one of the reasons I was so into this setting, this concept of, you know, this isolated and claustrophobic area that they're stuck in, right? And left to their thoughts. And for a few of them, you know, it's really quite a difficult prospect, isn't it? Listen, you know, a high pressure situation like this, that's the moment you get to see true character. And you see a true character throughout this episode, leading up to that conclusion, right? You see even Himeno. Yeah, that's quite the sight, isn't it? To see that, I don't want to call it, I mean, I almost called it a facade, but it is a mask. You know, I felt this in the last episode as well. You know, I felt that for a moment in time, or for a moment, you know, through that flashback, I get to see the real Himeno. And that this, you know, bubbly and fun Himeno is more of a facade of character traits, a mask. But you see all of that comes crumbling down. She falls apart. And it really is quite the jarring sight, isn't it? To see someone so calm and composed just fall apart like that, right? And that is also realistic, isn't it? As she sees her rock, her constant, her safety blanket, and I'm speaking of Aki, she sees that falling apart. She sees him falling apart. She sees the real possibility of him potentially dying. And, all that trauma just comes leaking out. She starts thinking of all of it. She's taken back to all of that loss that she's faced. And, those flashbacks at the graveyard, of course, the ravens are prominently featured. And, that is a symbol attached to Himeno, right? In that sense, there's even a bit of Odin there, isn't it? Right? The eye patch, the one eye, the ravens. And then, of course, the ravens and the symbolism there, it really is quite ominous, isn't it? I believe even the brand of the cigarettes, the smokes, it was something raven, right? And, in that sense, I've got to say, Denji, the man has an eye for detail, doesn't he? He remembered the brand of smokes or the cigarettes. Hey, that's the same one Aki smokes. He notices, he can read the situation. He really can, right? He excels at a lot of these things. He might not be the smartest. He might not be the most mature or experienced, but he can be quite effective in the field, right? He's been devil hunting for some time now, him and Pochta. I'll get to Pochta, the chainsaw, in a bit, because there's something really quite fascinating playing out here, Because it appears that Denji isn't really the target, right? He's only the target through the extension of having Pochta inside of him, right? The Eternity Devil straight up drops, bring me his heart, give me his heart, right? And that's Pochta. And according to Makima, Pochta's still alive. It's inside of you. It's your beating heart, right? So there's something really interesting going on here. And I'll come back to that. But Denji noticed that this devil, it needs to kill or get to Denji or the chainsaw indirectly, right? It's afraid to go up against Denji or the chainsaw one-on-one. It is trying these other tactics, and it's really quite effective for a lot of it, isn't it? Right? So much so that Denji had to step up by the end of it. Let me kind of shift the focus back to Himeno. The voice acting as she crumbles and falls apart. Oh my goodness, that sold the moment and then some. You feel the actual sense of fear in that voice, because Aki is really quite special to Himeno, really quite important to Himeno. Life is sweeter with a bit of dependence. I believe that was a line of dialogue, right? So it kind of really gets into the whole codependency that both Aki and Himeno have. It's a great relationship that they have there. I loved how there is a tonal shift within the tonal shift once again, right? It reminded me of the flashback in the last episode, going back to Aki's backstory. And I love the score playing its part right there. It was like this really enchanting and mesmeric background score. But in this one, it's more of a romantic one, isn't it? Right? And, I've got to mention the sound design and the sound mixing as well, right? Throughout this episode. That moment that Himeno sees Aki do that for her, kind of almost release her of that guilt and kind of implores her to not allow this any further, right? There's that shift in demeanor, almost as if her heart has kind of, her heart's kind of been opened up again, right? And I loved how the heartbeat starts transitioning in, right? Starts mixing into the score. Listen, I'm not a smoker myself, but, the social aspect of it's just a constant. You see it throughout society. You see it in everyday life, right? You can understand it because there's other things. Like I mentioned, coffee. Coffee's a big one. You meet someone over a coffee. It's the same type of thing here, right? And she is a little bit pushy about it. But ultimately it's more so because to her, that is how she is able to kind of open up perhaps, or maybe looking to make a connection. And, smoking happens to be her branch in that sense, reaching out, trying to make that connection. At first, he's really quite dialed in, right? He declines it on multiple occasions. I believe he says something like, it's bad for the bones. I plan on staying alive for a long time, or I don't plan on dying anytime soon. And of course, she tells him, I'll hold you to that, right? And That's the constant I kept mentioning earlier, right? That's the rock, the person she can depend on, because she's lost so many, and to have Aki around for so long, it has been this constant in her life. It has given it a bit of structure, even if it doesn't really quite have a purpose, at least in comparison to Aki, right? And you see, maybe in that sense, Aki's life means much more to Himeno than even her own life, right? That he has so much to live for, as she tells Denji, right? And point blank tells him, I'm sorry, but if it comes down to that, it's going to have to be you, right? So there is a bit of selfishness there as well, on Himeno's part, right? And again, that's realistic. It is, because she needs Aki as well in her life. She does. Going back to my initial point about the fantastic sound design continuing, that heartbeat that starts kicking in. And then of course, throughout the episode, inside the hotel on the 8th floor, you can hear the constant humming of the air conditioning, the background noises. And I've loved that in this anime, right? It's been this thing that's been quite noticeable throughout these episodes. It was noticeable at the hospital scene as well. The atmospheric sounds, in that, slice of life, morning routine of Aki and Denji, right? Love that. And earlier I mentioned that they achieved this really specific look. And, the look I was speaking of was that of film. It feels like they've actually achieved a shot on film look for animation, right? Of course, the art direction plays a big part here as well. And the dynamic movement, the character expressions and all of that. But the character expressions are some of the standouts once again in this episode. And Kobane's close-ups of her crying and her just freaking out, they felt so raw and real, didn't they? Did Kobane move at a much quicker pace all of a sudden? And, this is around the time she accuses Arai of being a spy, right? She starts running up on him, and all of a sudden there's like this moment, like this frame that almost skips, and she's like right up in his face, right? So perhaps that was a bit of that impressive skill set that Himeno mentioned in the last episode, and that she does possess. Listen, she reminds me of Courage the Cowardly Dog, right? This crippling fear of everything around her, right? Especially in this field. But even Courage, even in that state of crippling fear, even Courage, the Cowardly Dog, is able to make things happen, right? A lot of times he'll be rescuing his owners, because he digs deep, right? He faces his fears, and it's not as if he gets over them, he just faces them, right? And in that state of fear, he just kind of makes things happen. I feel like Kobane is going to get her moment in the spotlight as well at some point, surely. And I feel like it is going to be similar to Courage, because I'm not saying she's just going to get over her fear of everything, her crippling fear. I feel like she'll be able to kind of, function within that. Listen, I can totally see how, for many, Kobane might have been really quite annoying in this episode, right? I just didn't find myself hating on her or, annoyed at her, because I just felt like it was so real. It was also realistic. I had a lot of pity for her. So I didn't really even approach it from that aspect, right? Of being annoyed. Same goes for Arai, right? Yes, I'm protective of Denji, but it's completely understandable, especially because just not long ago, outside, before they even enter the hotel, Aki, right? He tells them straight up, no, they're expendable. I believe he said they're expendable. If they show any signs of joining the other side, they have permission to kill them. But, Aki and his perspective, the shift in his perspective about Denji, it's clear to see throughout this episode as well, right? Especially throughout this episode leading up to that conclusion. He's in the clutches of that ghost, right? And he still somehow manages to, shift and kind of be a shield for Denji and get stabbed for Denji. Yes, in terms of motives, he knows that he'll need all the help he can get. He's not delusional. He knows the Gun Devil is essentially a suicide mission. And this kind of almost ties back to that thing I mentioned about smoking and taking up smoking, and there being something really quite sad about it. It's almost as if, before he had no plans of dying, but now he's almost kind of accepted that going after the Gun Devil, it's essentially a suicide mission. That there is a really high likelihood that he is going to die in the process of trying to take down the Gun Devil. Kind of like, I might die, but I'll take down the Gun Devil as well. And for that reason, he might be making these types of deals, right? This katana deal that slices off or shaves off so many years from his life. But, clearly its impact, or, using the katana, the sword, it's probably devastatingly effective. So I'm sure that's going to happen at some point, right? But not anytime soon, again, given the connotations attached to using that. But like I mentioned, there's so many signs here that he is beginning to see Denji as a human, right? He is beginning to see Denji as someone he cares for, or is starting to care for as well, right? Beyond the motives, beyond the gun devil motives, right? I certainly think so. I'm sure many might think that, no, it's just as simple as him needing the Chainsaw Man in a fight against Gun Devil. But I feel like there is a sense of this dysfunctional family, but a family nonetheless, that is being built up and is being introduced into his life once again, right? I think I mentioned this a few episodes ago, right? A potential new family for Aki. But lastly, let's shift the focus to the Eternity Devil and the chainsaw, right? And this enticing offer that's being put on the table. And it's all quite fascinating and intriguing in terms of the plot from this point on, right? Or, the larger plot. It's a binding contract as well. But yeah, like I kind of touched up on earlier, it's not really asking for Denji, right? Because it said, even the corpse is fine. It's essentially looking for Pochita, isn't it? Right? It mentions, it name drops the heart. Now, the puzzling thing here, though, if you think about it, it's not that puzzling in terms of this specific devil being interested, because, the Bat Devil and the Zombie Devil, they didn't mention anything about the chainsaw, right? None of that. They had no interest in any of that. But this one, the Eternity Devil, like Himino mentioned earlier, this is really quite clever. She's never seen a devil do something that's clever, right? So this felt like quite a deliberate attempt or approach, right? Now, this one knew about the chainsaw, right? And it's the first time it's seeing Denji, or it knew that this person, Denji, has the chainsaw within him. But like I mentioned just a few moments ago, I feel like it's pretty clear cut, isn't it? This devil is different because this devil was meant to be carrying a fragment of the gun flesh, right? That's a big difference here. And it's good writing. It's good writing because they've already mentioned through Aki's report to Makima that they didn't find any gun flesh within the Bat Devil, or God damn it, I can't remember the other devil, the parasite, or the worm devil, right? They didn't find any gun flesh there. I mean, this was the reason for them to be there in the first place, because they've picked up that there might be a devil in there that might have the gun flesh or a fragment of the gun flesh, right? But there's still so many questions, right? So there's clearly some sort of, I don't know, man, Pochita, that cute ass Pochita. There's something much more attached to Pochita, because now, you start kind of backtracking, right? Pochita appearing to Denji in that state, right? How did Pochita end up like that, right? And, what's the connection there? There's some kind of connection to Gunflesh or the Gun Devil and the chainsaw, right? I believe the Eternity Devil said, I'll be the one to kill the chainsaw, right? So it really was starting to feel like there's a hit on the chainsaw, Pochita, I suppose. And again, like Makio mentioned, Pochita lives. The heart, Denji's beating heart is still there. Was that even the gun flesh that hit Pochita, right? So a lot to think about here, about Pochita being brought back to the forefront once again, the chainsaw. But, if this plays out and Denji actually pulls through and pulls off this insane, batshit crazy plan of his, the legend of the chainsaw, the fear of the chainsaw is going to kind of continue on that exponential incline. And I'm sure back at the office, Makima is going to be quite pleased with that, right? Like I mentioned, it's clear that the chainsaw has been part of her plans, or is a part of her plans, and the growth and the growth and the fear of the chainsaw is certainly a part of her plans as well, right? In terms of how she potentially plans on using the chainsaw and the Chainsaw Man or Denji in the near future. But yeah, I think that's about it for this one, folks. I love that episode. I really thought it was a fantastic episode, perhaps the best of the series so far, especially because of the tone and the setting, and that potential fight, if you could call it that, promises to be a visual treat in the next episode. You know, Denji essentially jumped into a black hole, right? Kind of. And some crazy shit is about to go down inside. And I also noticed that there's a lot of use of reflections in this episode as well, right? It's really quite effective, but a lot of it is for Aki as well, right? There's a standout frame of him or his reflection in the clock, right? I thought there was a lot there, a lot of subtext there. But yeah, to close it out, it was great to see Denji's resolve in that moment, right? Calm and composed under pressure. True character always shines under pressure, right? It comes out under pressure, and it doesn't have to be heroic. You see the true character of Arai and Kobane, and it's perfectly fine. That's realistic. Okay, so if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in full length or full opacity, and full opacity includes all the endings every single time, consider checking out the Patreon page. The link's in the description and the pinned comment. Also, I'm on social media, if that's your thing. Things like Instagram and Twitter. Again, links in the description and the pinned comment. Right then, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for your time, as time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.